Hey, it's Teresa from Life Beyond Diabetes, and I've got a new setup going on in here, so I hope that my dogs that are walking around don't knock it over. So, I promised today to talk about how keto almost killed me and why I still think keto is a fantastic idea. So, here I am. Um, as I mentioned in an email that I sent out today, 3 years ago today, I was admitted to the intensive care unit for ketoacidosis. That was approximately not quite a week after I had started doing a ketogenic diet. But this story starts actually a lot of years before that, way closer to the beginning of my diabetes story. And I have note cards today because I want to make sure there's some really important things that I'm going to talk about, and I want to make sure I don't forget anything. So if I'm looking down, hopefully it's not too distracting for that. Anyway, a couple years after my diagnosis, I discovered that low carb eating was a really effective way for me to keep my blood sugars low. And for a while, I didn't even take any other medication, not even metformin, which everybody with diabetes takes, it seems. I didn't tolerate metformin, so I couldn't take it. And I didn't take any other meds. I kept my blood sugars, within a really excellent goal range just by eating a low carb diet. Now, I'm not talking ketogenic diet. I'm talking just a basic low carb diet. And for about, so I would say that was probably around 2006 or 7 that I discovered that whole low carb thing that really worked for my diabetes. In about 2011, 12, my diabetes was not as well managed. I was taking medications, and even though I was eating the same way, my blood sugars kept getting higher and higher. And I was in grad school at the time, so I attributed that to stress. And, you know, we, my doctor and I just kind of let it get a little bit higher because we figured it would get better after I was done with grad school. Still, I was taking medications, still eating low carb, but my blood sugars were in a range that I would not consider acceptable. Nobody would consider it well managed diabetes. So fast forward another couple years after grad school, I talked to my doctor and said, you know what, these numbers aren't coming down. We need to throw some new medications at it. So in about 2014 or 2015, I started a medication that's in the class of medications called SGLT2 inhibitors. That's a kind of a fancy, complicated name, but what the SGLT2 inhibitors do is they take the excess sugar in your bloodstream and help you pee it out. And it is an enormous amount of sugar that can be cleared through your kidneys. So between the combination of eating still really low carb, not quite keto, but really, less than 100 carbs a day, and taking this SGLT2 inhibitor, my blood sugar came down to a reasonable number. Still not what I would consider well managed, but a lot of providers would consider that well managed where I was at that number. But my blood sugars kept going higher and higher and higher. Meanwhile, I had graduated from grad school a few years before that. I was an obesity medicine specialist and learning a lot about diabetes, becoming a diabetes specialist as well, because obesity medicine and diabetes go hand in hand. So I was learning more about the ketogenic diet. So I knew low carb really worked, but I didn't understand ketosis and how that all worked. So I was studying that and learning more about why that is so excellent and so effective for people with diabetes and for heart disease and other and cholesterol problems and other areas of life or of health. And I was watching my blood sugar get higher and higher, even on these, by this point, I think I was taking 3 different medications, and my blood sugars still weren't managed where I would like them to be, and I was very puzzled by this. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do the ketogenic diet because that seems to be the thing that's going to solve this problem. I'm going to bring those blood sugars back to where I want them to be. Now, like I said, I was a diabetes specialist, so I knew that I needed to stop that SGLT2 inhibitor. SGLT2 inhibitors do not go well. They don't play nice with ketogenic diet. There is a thing called euglycemic ketoacidosis, which means euglycemic means your blood sugar is good. Ketoacidosis is when you have way too many ketones on board. And that can happen to people who combine a ketogenic diet and an SGLT2 inhibitor. So the guidelines recommend that you stop your SGLT2 inhibitor 3 to 4 days before you start a ketogenic diet. Well, I was not going to take any risks at all, and I stopped my SGLT2 inhibitor about, I want to say it was at least 2 weeks. I'm thinking it was closer to 3 or 4 weeks. So it was plenty of time. The drug should have completely cleared my system by then. So again, I'm an expert in this. I knew all about it. I knew exactly what to do. I've been eating low carb for years. It was just a matter of cutting further back on the carbs and adding a little bit extra fat. And I dove right in hard into the keto diet on September 11th of 2017. And so that was a Monday. And since starting the SGLT2 inhibitor, I had noticed almost immediately that my blood sugar started climbing, and I was unhappy about that, but I thought it's okay because as soon as I get on the keto diet, they're going to go down. So anyway, excuse me. So I was, I started the keto diet, got going, really excited to get going on that, and almost immediately so I started on a Monday. On Tuesday, my blood sugars were already looking so much better. Still not where I would like them to be, but so much better than they had been. I'm talking previously to that, they had been in the 200s and 300s, and now they were down in the low 200s, high 100s. So not where anybody wants to put them as a goal, but fantastic compared to those really, really high numbers that I was having. And I did have some numbers even higher than that, that I ignored as my blood sugar monitor must have been wrong because I was eating too well to have blood sugar that high. Anyway, so I felt great for Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Thursday, I went kayaking, and I was an avid kayaker at the time. And I went kayaking, and I'm sorry, totally lost train of thought. I didn't have the energy that I normally do when I'm kayaking around the lake. And I was out with a friend, and she was not an avid kayaker, and I couldn't keep up with her. It was very odd. Usually I just could sail around the lake and knew exactly how to dodge the boats and all the other stuff. And I was just tired. And so I thought, okay, well, I attributed that to the keto flu that people talk about, right? So that was on Thursday, and Friday I was feeling even more tired. I had an appointment in the morning, and I went back to my office and I took a nap for like 2 or 3 hours. So I was just not feeling well. And by Friday evening, when I went home, I took my temperature because I felt so bad and I felt kind of achy and just felt really gross. And I thought, well, maybe this isn't the keto flu. So I took my temperature and I had a fever. It was a low grade fever, probably something right around 100. But I thought, okay, that's good to know it's not keto flu because keto flu does not cause a change in temperature. And so I thought, okay, I'm just fighting a bug. I'll just plan to stay home all day Saturday and sleep and let it wear off. So on Saturday, I was home alone, and I was noticing that I was starting to have some trouble breathing. So I called my sister. She lives about 10 minutes away. And I called her and said, I think I need to go to the emergency room. My husband and daughter were out all day for something. And I said, I think I need to go. Can you come drive me in? Because I'm concerned about my breathing. And again, she was there probably within 10 minutes. And by the time she got to our house, and this is Saturday afternoon, by the time she got to our house, I was having such difficulty breathing that we both said, 911 is a better option. So honestly, from that point forward, I don't really remember a lot of what happened. I remember the paramedics came, the fire department paramedics came. I remember they were worried about where the dogs were, of all the things. That's one of the things I think about. And my sister had to go lock the dogs up in their crates, and the dogs were really worried about me. And then I remember that they were going to take me in an ambulance, but then they decided that I was too sick to go in the regular ambulance, and they had to call Medic One, which is the what you do with the really, really sick people. And and then I remember parts of the drive in the ambulance, but not a lot of it. And I'll tell you, every time I see a Medic One truck, my heart just kind of stops because it kind of throws me right back into that scary, scary position I was in. Um, and then I was in the hospital for about a week. It took them a little while to diagnose what was going on because my blood sugars were high, but they weren't that high because I was eating the keto diet, right? It took them a while to figure out what was going on because they weren't running the labs that they would have discovered exactly what the problem was. Um, I ended up in the ICU, and I stayed there for, honestly, I don't remember. I think it was about 5 days in the ICU and then another 2 days in the regular part of the hospital. So I was in the hospital for at least a week. Um, it took me over 6 months to recover my full energy. I still don't have complete lung capacity. Now, there's a couple other things that happened in addition to the ketoacidosis. Remember that fever that I had? There was some sort of virus on board, and I developed pneumonia in addition to the ketoacidosis. So it wasn't just the ketoacidosis that almost killed me. It was the combination of a lot of things. I was never put on a ventilator, which I'm quite relieved. But I do remember the nurses sitting next to me and reminding me how to breathe. That was very scary. Um, and again, most of what I know about my hospital stay, other than the few tiny little memories that I have, um, comes from what I've learned by reading my medical records. And when I looked at my medical records, and not my medical, it's not even my medical records. I haven't accessed my medical, I haven't looked at my full medical records. I've only looked at the lab results that are available through my online, my medical record portal that's available online. And the only part of the hospital stay that's available there's no chart notes. It's just the lab results. And when I looked at my lab results, my ketones were so high that every book I've read said that I should not have been alive. There were other things about my labs that were quite alarming to me. Now, my husband said that he was never really worried about my safety because the ICU nurses did a really excellent job and they really reassured him that I was going to be fine. Um, so maybe the ICU nurses knew something that I don't know about looking at those labs, but it's pretty scary. Um, One of the things that happened um, pretty close to immediately is that as soon as they did discover that my ketones were high, they put me on insulin. And um, I have been on insulin ever since. And here's what happened. Here's why this all happened. This does not happen to most people. This should not happen to most people. But what happened is that, remember I said that my blood sugars were creeping higher and higher and higher? That's because I didn't have enough insulin on board for myself. I was not making enough insulin. I thought I wasn't doing a good enough job managing my diabetes, but it turns out that my body wasn't making insulin anymore. It wasn't making enough. And insulin is a necessary part of a healthy ketogenic diet. Most people who are in earlier stages of diabetes, even a lot of people who are in later stages of diabetes, they're still producing enough insulin that they don't need to worry about what happened to me happening to them. Healthy people definitely don't need to worry about that because the insulin that their body naturally produces is going to clear those ketones. So you can get into nutritional ketosis, which I'm going to throw some numbers out here. So uh, a lot of people check their ketosis by the peace strips. I actually recommend for my clients that we use a blood ketone monitor and that you're checking to see where you are in ketosis. And on a blood ketone monitor, nutritional ketosis usually starts at 0.3, and the recommended kind of high place that you might go is about 3.5. It depends on kind of which sources you look at. Anything above 8 is alarming and 10 is dangerous. My ketones were up. The lowest one I saw in my early hospital stay was above 50, and they were higher than that at some point as well. So my ketones, this is not something that happens to most people. So again, ketogenic diet, not something to be scared of, because what happened to me does not happen to most people. So that's one of the contributors, is that I don't have enough insulin. Another thing was that virus. We already talked about that. That made me a lot sicker than I probably needed to be. And honestly, I think that even if I hadn't been on a ketogenic diet at some point, because my insulin production was getting lower and lower and lower, and I was coming up with reasons to explain away my high blood sugars, eventually I would have ended up in ketoacidosis, because that's something that happens to all people who don't have enough insulin, because ketones are naturally occurring in your body. So the end results of that one, I mentioned that I've been on insulin since I was in the hospital. Um, and honestly, so my endocrinologist and I have talked, and we are not sure if I am a true type 2 diabetic or if I am a late developing type 1. And there are a few different kinds of later developing type 1s. And you can discover this by doing certain tests. There's lab results there's labs we could order. And we have specifically not found that out, because my medication regimen right now works really well for me. And the result wouldn't change my treatment plan, and might actually get in the way, because my insurance is currently covering medications that may not be covered if I got the wrong result, definitively defining whether or not I'm type 1 or type 2. So I tell people, and I consider myself a type 2 on insulin. Maybe some people call that a type 1.5. I don't know where I am, but as far as I'm concerned, I live the lifestyle of a person with type 2 diabetes who takes insulin. So the other end result of that, besides always taking insulin, is that now whenever I'm eating low enough carbs that I might go into ketosis, I check my ketones daily on my ketone meter. And that's a promise that I've made to my family, because they don't ever want to see me that sick again, and I can't blame them. I don't want to be that sick again. I'm honestly not worried about my ketones getting too high, because I've been doing this for the last, probably about 2.5 years ago is when I started occasionally eating ketogenic again. And I've been mostly doing that, off and on for the last 2 years, more on than off, as far as eating ketogenic diet. Um, and I've never seen my ketones go even into the middle of the nutritional ketosis level. And that's intentional. I keep my carbs a little higher than I probably would had I not had this experience. So let me see. People say, so you literally almost died. You're in the hospital for a week. Why do you still recommend a ketogenic diet? And my answer is, for people who want to eat this way, this is not for everybody, but for people who want to eat such a low carb diet, it is an excellent, excellent, excellent lifestyle choice to treat your diabetes, with some caveats. The caveats are the things that we learned from my story. For most people, it's very safe. For anybody with diabetes, I want to make sure that they're doing a few extra things to be sure that it's really safe. Um, and let me see, what did I write down about what I was going to say? And because it's so personal to me, I'm really careful with my own clients. And if anybody that I'm working with online, online I don't give medical advice, but I do tell people how I talk with people and help them figure out how to talk to their own medical providers to make sure that they've got all the pieces in place to be very safe. So I want to make sure that you're still making insulin, and that your insulin levels are high enough to clear the ketones. Because if you're not making enough insulin, it's not safe for you to do without being on insulin. If you're not making enough insulin, we should probably consider getting you on some insulin also. I also want to make sure that people have a full medication review, because there are medications that do not play nice. with a ketogenic diet. And I want to make sure that people with diabetes, especially, are checking their ketones quite regularly because they need to know the difference between nutritional ketosis, which is safe, which is an excellent treatment for diabetes, and for a lot of people helps them lose weight, and ketoacidosis. There's not a big number in between nutritional ketosis and ketoacidosis. And I think it's important for people to know those numbers so that they don't slide into into ketoacidosis. Again, it's not going to happen to people who don't have diabetes because if you're clearing your insulin, you're clearing your insulin. Of course, there are other reasons that you can have ketoacidosis. Could be related to medication reaction or some other interesting things going on. And I think that is all that I was going to talk about on here today. Let me see if I had any. Nope, no questions that I can see. But I also wanted to say, so last week I promised that I'm going to be getting a meal plan out. I am working on that meal plan. It's turning out to be a lot more complicated than I expected because I'm doing all my own recipes from recipes that I use that I'm making. I'm putting them into the meal planning software. So I do promise that I will have that out by this weekend. I will send an email to the people on the list, and I'll also put a post here in Facebook if you are interested in that with information on how to get the week-long autumn ketogenic meal plan. It's full of yummy things that you might like to eat in the fall because 'tis the season around here. We're cooling off. I'm starting to add squash and soup back into my diet. So I'll share that with you later this week. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, let me know. And I will see you back here next Thursday and every Thursday at 2:30 Pacific. Bye.